If you're new here, welcome. This is the Beehive broadcast. I come on here, we talk about things that a lot of people aren't talking about, but people are experiencing in their everyday lives. They're just subjects that are a little bit more on the taboo side. Nobody wants to talk about them. They got shame, they're embarrassed, they feel humiliated, or what have you. And so people aren't talking. The problem is that when we don't talk, we feel isolated and alone in our struggles. And so I like to dive in deep to different things, different life experiences that people have going on and talk about them. What's the psychology behind it? How do we come up with resolutions or solutions to different things? And every once in a while, I like to have a guest on here that comes on and shares their personal experience with whatever the topic might be. So today I am going to be speaking on hoarding. What's behind the piles, right? The emotional reality of hoarding. The emotional reality of hoarding is that it is a mental health condition that very easily turns into more than that. So today we're talking about hoarding. What is behind the piles? What's the emotional reality of hoarding? We're going to explore hoarding today with compassion, because first of all, it is a very difficult thing to live with. I'm going to educate you. I'm going to talk honestly about it. And the goal is to help viewers understand that hoarding isn't about being lazy or being messy, but it's often a complex emotional and psychological struggle connected to trauma, anxiety, grief, control, scarcity, attachment, or mental health conditions. So this discussion, we're going to focus on what hoarding actually is, how it affects individuals and their families, the emotional roots and warning signs that we can look for, the difference between collecting and hoarding, the shame, the secrecy, and the social stigma behind it, safe and supportive ways to help people, recovery, resources, and most of all, hope. So welcome to the Beehive broadcast. I come on here regularly and talk about difficult subjects that people are experiencing and not talking about. And when we don't talk about these things, we feel very isolated and very alone when it comes to things like hoarding, because it is something that you can see. It's something that people will judge, and so if a person is dealing with this particular problem, then they may feel a lot of shame and they may have a lot of secrecy going on. So we're going to explore that today. I want to talk about why it's so misunderstood and how common it actually is. Now, there's a lot of people that live with this particular problem. And it is a problem because it can affect our health and safety and the health and safety of our family. It can create fire hazards. There's so many different things different problems that can come about because of hoarding. So I have been disabled for 10 years now. Prior to my disability causing me to become permanently unable to work, it's been a decade. It doesn't feel like that long, but it's been a decade. Before I stopped working, I was running a division of a restoration company. We did home restoration, and we worked closely with insurance companies for property restoration. Okay, so I'm going to be fidgeting a lot today because I am in some braces to hold myself together. So I apologize for that in advance, but just so you know, that's what's going on. So let me get back to how common it actually is. So working in property restoration, home restoration through insurance, I went into a lot of homes that had disasters happen, like fire, flood, other. And I can remember at one point coming home and saying to my husband, I cannot believe how many people live in complete chaos. They have so much stuff. They have so much stuff that they you can't even see the toilet, or you can't use the kitchen, or you can't get into the refrigerator, or I couldn't believe how many people lived like this. And so one of the things that was really important to me, that I taught my staff, was when we go into somebody's home, especially somebody that has this kind of thing going on, it's important to be compassionate, and it's important to establish trust, because one, that they're traumatized by a loss that they've had, whether it's a fire or a flood or whatever. Two, they're already they have secrecy surrounding their home, the condition of their home. They're very ashamed of the way that it is. And three, when that kind of thing happens, the people that come in to help feel like invaders, because they're invading your personal space. They're going through all of your private things. They're touching everything. And I mean, I've seen borderline hoarding, and I've seen the most extreme of hoarding, where I've had to go in with shovels and pails, and we pulled out like dead animals and stuff. So I mean, it can be very bad. I shouldn't say bad. It can be a very serious thing. So some of the questions we're going to explore are, why do people hold on to things? When does the clutter become something more serious? And why is hoarding so misunderstood? So hoarding is rarely about the stuff itself. Often the objects that are being held on to, they represent safety, or they represent identity, a memory, grief, or even survival to some people, it feels like. So what is hoarding? Hoarding is the persistent difficulty of discarding possessions. So you've accumulated possessions, and you cannot let go of them. You have a strong emotional distress when you have to let things go. Some people even have so much distress that they have panic attacks if they have to let something go. The living spaces can become unstable or unsafe. And a lot of times people have developed an emotional attachment to these objects for whatever reason it is. So they have this difficulty letting go of them because of that emotional attachment. Now, there's different things that people hoard. Common types of hoarding are clothing. Some people hoard clothing. I want to say that my mother was a borderline hoarder of clothing. She was many different sizes in her. It's so hard for them. She was so many different sizes in her life, and she had clothing from all of the sizes that she was. You know, she was a size 8, and then she was all the way up to like a size 22, which is big. And some people hoard clothing. They just don't ever let anything go. My aunt was similar to that. Although she hoarded everything. It's very, very difficult. Another thing that people hoard is paper, documents. They just don't let anything go. Sentimental items, like I feel an attachment to a sentimental item, so they don't let anything go. Food containers, which is strange, but it happens. Food containers. Furniture, people will hoard furniture. Some people, it starts somewhere, right? So we're going to talk about that as we go along. Some people hoard animals. Now here, this is something where when that does happen, that is going to become a safety issue for you, your family, and the animals. And oftentimes, if it is reported, then someone will intervene if there is animal hoarding going on. There was a lady here, I think she was hoarding poodles, and she had 22 poodles, I think, in her house, which they constituted as hoarding. Useful someday objects. So maybe someday it'll be useful. I'm just going to hang on to it because I might need it. And it's interesting because yesterday I said something to my husband about downsizing and selling stuff. And his response was, as soon as I get rid of anything, I'm going to need it. So, he has a lot of tools and stuff. So, but he also does a lot of work in the garage. So, now let's talk about the difference between collecting and hoarding. So, hoarding always starts somewhere, and sometimes it starts with collecting. But collecting is organized, okay? So people who collect things are organized. And Shell and I were just talking about those precious moments figurines, right? It's interesting that you actually mentioned that, because my mom tried to start a collection for me of those when I got married, the first time I got married. And I had a couple of them. And they were displayed on a shelf, with other knickknacks and stuff. But I hate knickknacks because that's just more stuff to dust. So I get rid of that stuff. But collecting things is organized. So you would see, like, somebody has shelves and they have a collection of Lego, or they have a collection of model airplanes, or they have a collection of Precious Moments figurines, or Royal Dalton figurines, or china, or porcelain dolls, or records, or I don't know. There's all kinds of things that people collect. So collecting is organized, whereas hoarding would be chaotic. You would see, maybe they're collecting things, it would be in a pile somewhere, right? Or many piles. It's just not organized. It's chaotic. It's all over the place because there's just too much of it. Oh, yeah. Collecting, again, like the display, the items are displayed, they're displayed proudly, right? You've got a nice shelf, you've got them organized, you've got everything looking good. It's something that is pleasing to your eye because it's your collection. You like it, you want to look at it, you want to show it off. Yeah, there's so many of them, eh? Hoarding, people that hoard items that often will hide them, hide the items. They won't, hey Goku, welcome. They won't proudly display them because there's too many of them. They're chaotic. It's not organized. Collecting maintains the function of your home. If you have a collection versus hoarding, your function, the home function is not altered. But when you're hoarding, the home becomes impaired, or the functionality of your home is impaired. Meaning maybe you can't get to the bathroom, maybe you can't get to the kitchen, maybe your laundry room is not usable anymore because it's just too full of stuff, right? So collecting, people find joy in collecting. It's an enjoyment based thing, it's a hobby. People collect stuff. Hoarding, on the other hand, is an anxiety and a fear based action. So, from the emotional standpoint, hoarding is coming from a place of fear, anxiety, trauma, emotional imbalance, let's call it. I'm good, thank you, Goku. How are you? So we're going to talk about the underlying causes of, yeah, less than a 2 foot walkway through the house. I'm going to talk about that too because I have seen a lot of that. But let's explore the underlying causes of hoarding. So first thing is trauma. So let's say you have a collection. You have a collection. It's a nice collection. It's on display. And then you have a trauma happen. A big loss or poverty or abuse or neglect or some type of sudden instability. And then all of a sudden, everything gets out of hand. Mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, OCD related behaviors, ADHD or executive dysfunction, PTSD, and grief. Those are some mental illnesses, mental health issues that can be connected to hoarding. The emotional themes are a fear of waste, one. So we're afraid of wasting something. I don't want it to go to waste, so I'm just going to keep it. Fear of needing something later. You don't want to not. So they have this fear of, well, maybe I'm going to need it later, so I don't want to get rid of it because what if I need it? What's going to happen? Then I have to go out and buy it again, right? The emotional attachment to things. People become emotionally attached to stuff. How are you? Identity is tied to those possessions. So you've connected somehow your identity to your possessions. That's another thing that can be an emotional theme behind hoarding. Control and safety. You have this sense of control because you control your environment, and collecting these things or having these things, you're attached to them. They make you feel safe. They make you feel like that's who you are. Without them, you don't know who you are. There's a lot of layers behind hoarding. It is often an emotional survival strategy that no longer works. Welcome, Jamie. Good morning. So let's talk about the hidden impact of hoarding, the effects on the individual first. We're going to talk about that. First, isolation. The individual is often isolating themselves. They don't socialize. They don't have people into their homes. They don't take pictures. They don't go on camera. There's a lot of things they don't do, like, because they're hiding. They're hiding. Shame. The amount of shame that a person feels because of the condition that they live in. Their rational brain tells them that it's not right, that it's too much, but something within them is overriding that rational brain. And then they feel that shame because of the conditions that they're living in. It could cause health hazards. So health hazards, especially in this sense where, like, if they're hoarding animals, or if you're hoarding so much stuff that your animals die in your home and you don't even know because you don't know where your animals are. And that is a real thing. Then there's the fire risks. If your exit ways and your windows are blocked off with items and you have a fire, how are you going to get out? Sleeping difficulties. A lot of people that live with hoarding don't have a place to sleep because their bed and everything is just covered, it's buried. And then there's the depression and the hopelessness, because how do you get out of that? There's so much emotion behind it all, and there's so much there that's really hard on an individual to deal with, to the point where you can become very depressed and feel very hopeless. Then let's move into the effects that it can have on your family and relationships. Conflict. Because if you have children, or if you have a partner or whatever, and they're not a hoarder, or they don't, they don't, it causes conflict within the family. There could cause fights and whatever. There's too much stuff here. We need to get rid of it. Conflict. Estrangement from family members. People don't come over to your home anymore because it's not safe, because it's uncomfortable. Resentment. They resent you, you resent them. There's the fear and the helplessness. So people that love you may be scared for you. They feel helpless for you because there isn't anything they can do to help you through that. It is something that needs to be worked on with a professional, and something that needs to be dealt with in a slow, steady way. And then you have your children growing up in this unstable environment, because if there is chaos like that in the home, then there is chaos in the mind, and it's just an unstable environment for children. So we'll talk about the cycle of it. Number one, anxiety. So I've got anxiety already. Of acquiring and keeping items. So everything I get. So we're trying to find some temporary relief. How do you get the temporary relief from hoarding? Shame and stress. Avoidance. So you avoid going home. You avoid looking at it. You avoid talking about it. You avoid letting people come to your home. and repeat. It's just a cycle that goes. Yeah. Do you want to, let me go through this real quick, and then I'll open my PK app. I closed it because I forgot to close it, and usually I close it when I'm doing something. So there's a lot of, and there's other things too that can contribute to hoarding. One of those things can also be disability. So if you're living with a disability and you don't have the ability to stay on top of things, then it can appear to be like you're a hoarder because maybe you can't take out the trash, or maybe you can't clean your home, or maybe you can't, there's a lot of things that happen, and things just pile and pile and pile, and then before you know it, it's out of control. And how do you get out of that? How do you get out of that? Just clean it doesn't work. So this is a harmful approach, and a lot of times people that don't understand the emotional part of it or the mental health part of it will say things like, well, just clean it. Just clean your mess. That's not that easy. Some of the harmful approaches are an intervention, forcing someone to clean it out. And like I said, I worked in restoration, and there were times where we went into these types of homes, and these people were forced to clean out things because they had a fire, because they had a flood. Like, there was no choice. We had to take everything out of the home. And I watched some of the trauma and some of the stress that it caused people that had problem with hoarding. It is not that easy. Public humiliation, another horrible, harmful approach. Don't public humiliate people. They're going through stuff. You don't know what that is. Public humiliation is never okay. Threats and ultimatums. Don't threaten people. If you don't clean up, I'm never going to talk to you again. That's the estrangement part. That's threats and ultimatums. Don't do that. Mockery or judgment. Don't do that. Imagine if, let's use a different example here. I'm going to circle back on that because I can't think of anything right now. But I was going to do like another, something that's not hoarding, but mockery or judgment. Okay, here's an example. Imagine you're driving along, and you come to an intersection. You got a green light. You drive through the intersection, and someone, boom, T-bones you. You had the green light. So somebody comes in, and they get out of the car, and you're injured, and they look at you and they're like, well, why didn't you see me coming? It's your fault. You're a terrible driver. It's your fault. We're not gonna get you help because you didn't see that someone was gonna T-bone you. So you're dumb. You're a terrible driver. You're unaware. Like, it's not only is it not right, it doesn't even make any sense, right? So just, always use compassion when it comes to difficult things like this. You never want to force somebody to do something they're not prepared to do. These fail because of the trauma response. These kinds of things, forcing cleanouts, public humiliation, threats and ultimatums, mockery, judgment, those just clean it kind of attitude, they fail because of the trauma response. A person goes into a panic, especially if they're attached to the items in their home. They go into a panic. that it increases their distrust for people. It causes re-hoarding behaviors. So maybe they'll let you intervene and clean out, but they're just going to go right back to hoarding things again. It's awful. Oh. And then it's emotional devastation, right? It's emotional devastation, and you don't see it, and you can't shame somebody into healing, okay? Because there is a mental condition and an emotional condition behind the piles. And it's like you can't shame somebody with PTSD into not having PTSD anymore. You can't shame somebody that has ADHD into not having ADHD anymore. You can't shame someone into healing. It's so sad when that happens. So how can we support people compassionately? Listen without judgment. So if somebody is opening up to you and talking to you about this type of thing, listen to them. Don't judge them. Just listen to them. Focus on safety first. You know, I'm really concerned about this, your safety. Can we ask permission? Can we go over here and remove this? It's blocking this exit. I'm concerned for your safety. Ask permission. Use gentle language. Gentle language. I know that this is really hard for you right now, but I love you and I'm concerned for your safety. I'll help you. What would you feel comfortable doing first? Gentle language. Yeah. It is a vicious cycle. So you're forcing somebody to do something they can't, they're not in the headspace to do it. They have to be prepared. They have to be mentally prepared to heal. You can't make somebody heal that isn't ready to heal. So listening without judgment, focusing on their safety, asking their permission, using that gentle language, and then celebrate the small progress. Yeah, believe that. Less than a month. Celebrate this small progress. Encourage therapy and support. So, things you don't want to do. Don't throw things away secretly. Don't throw it away secretly. I have done this. I have done this because I have a really close friend who has a problem, and I have cleaned her home several times because she asked me to. She always feels good when it's done, but then it goes right back, right? Because she's not in that mental headspace to, it's way better now, but I can remember cleaning out some of the kids' clothes and putting things into bins, and her husband saying to me, "Oh, you can't get rid of that. You can't get," and I'm like, "Well, does this fit your daughter anymore?" "No." "Well, yeah, then we're getting rid of it, right? We're going to give it to somebody who," and I told her, like, you're affecting their mental health even over the small things. And it's interesting, and you wouldn't know it, but a lot of people that are living in this way, they know every single item that's in that pile. You would be shocked. They know everything that's there, like right down to the little piece of paper that they had written a password on from an account that they made 15 years ago, you know. Like, They know everything that's in that pile. So don't throw their things away secretly. That's a terrible idea. Get permission always. Make sure that they're okay with it, that they feel comfortable enough to just take that little step, right? Um, don't criticize or ridicule them. Never make fun of somebody that is living like this. What you perceive and and how you judge them, just if you haven't got anything nice to say, keep your mouth shut. That's just really what it comes down to. Don't overwhelm them. Don't go in and say, let's take all of this and donate it to Goodwill or donate it to the Salvation Army or wherever you donate to. Don't overwhelm them. That's overwhelming. Even talking about it can be overwhelming. It can throw them into a panic. Never assume laziness, okay? 9 times out of 10, it's not laziness. There's something else there. Like, people that hoard are not typically lazy. They're overwhelmed. They have an overwhelmed nervous system. Don't make it worse. Here's some more examples of supportive language or gentle language that you can use with people, because I mean, it is a lot more common than you know. A lot more common. I think that probably more people are borderline hoarders than not, if I'm honest, just based on the homes that I had gone in when I was working. So here's some more supportive language. What makes this item important to you? Why is this important to you? Tell me about it. How can we make this space safer? What are you comfortable with? I want to make this space safer for you. Would you like help? Not I'm going to help you, because you're forcing something on somebody that they don't necessarily want to do or they're not ready to do yet. Would you like help deciding what to keep? And if you're using these kinds of questions, if you're asking these kinds of questions to people, you're not asking for the whole house right off the get-go. You're asking, like, there's this and there's this. Would you like help deciding which thing to keep? Right? That's a little less overwhelming. So, gentle, slow, supportive, no judgment. It's not your job to judge. We're humans. We're all humans. We all have problems. We all have things that we need to go through. We all need help sometimes. It's not our job to judge one another. You cannot go too fast or rush. What does the recovery and the healing look like for somebody with a hoarding disorder? There is therapy. Specifically cognitive behavioral therapy. Yes. 3 things to decide on. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. So cognitive behavioral therapy is a really good way to help somebody to change their mindset. Or change how they view things or how they feel about things. Yeah, lots of breaks. It's so hard. Trauma-informed care. So arranging care with someone who is trauma-informed. Because if the issue is stemming from trauma, which a lot of times it is, then you want to have therapy that is trauma-informed. We're not going to go to a therapist that says, oh, you're like this because your parents did this to you when you were 5. You know, like, let's not do the therapist, the blame game. There's no fault in this. It's just, how do we manage it? How do we recover it? How do we heal? Support groups are a really good way to manage the recovery and healing, because even if you feel that shame, you're embarrassed, in a support group, everybody is dealing with the same thing. Maybe there's different reasons behind it, but all the people in the room have the same issue. So all of a sudden, you're not alone anymore. You're not isolated, and you don't need to be ashamed or embarrassed, because everybody's dealing with the same thing. They all understand where you're coming from. They all know what it is like to live where you're at. Support groups are wonderful. Yeah, no one wants to make things worse, walking on eggshells, trying to be gentle. Yeah, and you just want to do the tough love because it's fast and it's like, but it's not, hey, fun. It's not sustainable recovery. It's not something that is going to be sustained, because you're rushing somebody into doing something that they're not mentally prepared to do. Professional organizers that are trained in hoarding specifically, very important, because you don't want somebody that comes in that is like, we're just gonna clean it all out. Let's just get a big dumpster here. We'll get a big semi load, and we'll just haul everything out, and we'll just put it in the big metal bin, and we'll just light it on fire, and everything's gonna be all good. You know, like, don't do that to people. You need a professional organizer that's trained in hoarding, so then they know that, let's put this pile here and this pile here, and then we're going to choose 1 or 2 things from each of those piles and take it out of the house today. It's a very small step. It's a way to start organizing things and removing things. Family support is very important for recovery and healing. However, there's a lot of estrangement that does happen because of this condition. So that is something to keep in mind, that a lot of people that have hoarding tendencies don't have the family support. And support is something that is incredibly important. Talk about the realistic expectations, okay? And when I say that, I don't mean what's realistic for you as a person who's supporting. I mean, what's realistic for them. So, realistic expectations. Recovery is gradual. So that's something that is realistic. It's gradual. Relapses can happen. And a lot of times, if it's not gradual enough, if they're not in the headspace, if they're not getting the type of treatment that they need, or the type of therapy that they need, or the support that they need, outside of removing the things and cleaning up the clutter, then the relapse is going to happen. I promise. The progress can look very slow, and that's okay. Because there is no timeline. Healing's not linear. It's not just a straight path forward. There are steps that need to be taken. Yes. Being patient, holding space for them. Holding space for them is really important because the emotional healing matters as much, if not more, than the cleaning. If the emotional healing hasn't happened, the space isn't going to stay clean because their difficulties that they have are going to still be there. A person's worth is not measured by the condition of their home. Yes. So today I am talking about hoarding. It was a topic that was requested, and thank you, Shelley, for recording. Hey, Misty, welcome. Yes. So and it's interesting that you say that, Misty, because there are things that happen to people that have disabilities or chronic illnesses, or people that have neurological problems, me included. And it's called task paralysis. Okay. So I often have task paralysis. And you look at something, you know what you want to do, but no matter how you try to arrange yourself mentally, you are never prepared to do it. You cannot physically get yourself to do it. It's task paralysis. It's an actual thing that a lot of people deal with. So it's a little bit different than hoarding, but it can cause your whole home to be in complete chaos, right? Because if you have overwhelm every time you think about doing a task, and there's different things that there's different reasons why that happens. Task paralysis. So hoarding can start there too, because it's a mental, yeah, it's a mental health thing. I deal with task paralysis a lot, and I have had some issues with my living arrangements, or my home. Let me just be 100% honest here. I have been disabled, unable to work for a decade. I suffer from task paralysis, not as badly as I used to, but I still deal with it because I have this fear in the back of my head that if I do the task, it's going to set me into a relapse or a flare, and then I'm not going to be able to do anything, including self-care, like feeding myself or getting dressed or bathing or those kinds of things. So I have it for that reason. Like, I will avoid doing things because I have this fear of getting hurt or getting more sick. It's a little different, but it could very easily become a hoarding problem. It could very easily affect my safety in my home. I have not been able to move my furniture like regularly to clean, behind, under, whatever, in a decade, more than a decade probably. No, it's been a decade. It's not quite been a decade, because when I first stopped working, I was working full time and then some. And when I first stopped, I was like, oh, now I can look after myself, my health. So I was able to look after myself a little bit better. So I was able to look after my home a little bit better. I was able to, but over time, my abilities have been reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced. And so when I am, and this happened to me not too long ago with Star Maker, actually, I was taking on too much responsibility on here. I was getting off track to what I was doing initially. Yes, it's common with depression. It can be a cause of depression, and it can be depression too. It's a symptom of, it can be a symptom of, most definitely. I got overwhelmed because I was doing too much, and it was affecting my ability to look after myself, look after my home, look after my dogs, make my meals, whatever. So when I get task paralysis, it's because I'm relapsing, or I'm crashing, or whatever you want to call it. I live with multiple overlapping conditions. So it can be, I have to be careful. That's all. But it can happen. Aw, that's sweet. So with hoarding, though, we're going into something a little bit different. We have, lots of times we have people who look very well put together. They're perfectly clean, their hair is nicely done, their clothes are clean, they're pressed, they're clean shaven, they smell good, they're they're really well put together. You would have no idea of how they're living. No idea at all. I guess it's kind of like a mask, right? So with hoarding, one of the key things to look at is having an emotional attachment to items or to objects. What makes it difficult for people to let go of things? Is it the emotional attachment? Is it because they have placed their identity within those items? And you say messy, Misty, sorry. Messy. And that was one of the things that I first talked about when I first came on here, is that it isn't having these kinds of things happen. It's not messiness. It's not laziness. It's not messiness. It's a mental health condition that is brought on by trauma. It's brought on by illness. Miss Messy. Miss Messy. I like that. It's funny. My husband is messy. Okay, he's messy. He. I'm going to share this with you. He's messy. He's not a hoarder. He's a hoarder too. I'm going to tell you that too. He hoards tools. I make fun of him all the time. I call him Oscar from. But he's messy, everywhere he goes, he leaves a mess. So he grinds up his coffee for his espresso in the morning. Uh, he he puts it in his container to take it to work because he's got an espresso machine at work. And on the counter in front of the grinder is always coffee grinds everywhere and coffee beans everywhere. I don't even know how, like, how do you do that? And, like, walk in the house with mucky shoes. What is all over the floor? Oh, it's probably from my shoes. Can you not clean it up? Like, he's messy. Drops shit on the floor. Like, he's messy. He's just whatever. That's fine. Oh, thank you, Miss T. I appreciate you, honestly, so much, you guys. How can families help without controlling? And we talked about that. It's a man thing to walk with shit. 40 years. Just like what? Like, okay, the laundry basket is right there. Why are your dirty clothes on the floor beside it? Like, don't ask questions there are no answers to. So how do families help without controlling? It's a man thing. Fun says it's a man thing. It's probably a man thing. If we get enough women on here that live with men, is it a man thing? Do they throw their clothes on the floor beside the laundry basket? Yeah, OCD. Yeah, OCD is one of the things that can be a contributor to hoarding, as well, the obsessive compulsive behaviors. Um, ADHD can be a contributor. Trauma. Let me scroll up here. I have a whole list. I'm going to go over it again because I think I'll go over that again for you. Because it's important to know that these things can come from these connections. There's mental health connections with hoarding, anxiety, depression, OCD and OCD related behaviors, ADHD and executive dysfunction. That's where the task paralysis comes from, I think. PTSD and grief. Okay, and then there's the emotional themes behind it. Could be fear of waste. Yes, PTSD, absolutely. Fear of needing something later. So there's the emotional themes behind it. Fear of waste. I don't want to waste anything. I'm not going to get rid of it. The fear of maybe I might need it later. What if I throw it out? What if I get rid of it and then I need it? If I get rid of it, I'm going to need it tomorrow. For sure. I'm not getting rid of it. The emotional attachment. Feeling like if you get rid of something, it causes you to have like anxiety or panic, or you don't know how you're going to live without it. It's emotional attachment. Your identity is tied to these possessions for some reason. You have attached your identity to possessions. Loneliness and comfort. You're lonely. These things bring you comfort. You have control of everything you bring in and take out of your house. It's control and a safety thing. So there's a lot of layers, emotional layers there. There's a lot of mental health connections and neurological connections as well, because ADHD is a neurological disease. Yeah. At the end of the day, it requires recovery and healing, and it requires the person to want the recovery and the healing. Take a whole. What role does grief and trauma play in hoarding? How many people have trauma and hoard? I bet a lot. Do you think hoarding is misunderstood? I do. I think it's very misunderstood. I think people would, you would see, maybe you see in somebody's window, maybe you see in your neighbor's window, and you can see piles of whatever in their house, and you think, oh, they're pigs. That's a very common misunderstanding, because they're not. They're not. They have an illness. They have something going on that requires help, support. Have you known someone affected by hoarding? Obviously, we are talking about it. So, and what do you think the emotion is that is most connected to hoarding? What emotion is most connected to hoarding? To me, I think it's likely anxiety and fear. So I have an aunt, or an aunt, however you want to say it, that passed away when she was 52. This is a concern for me because I'm 52 right now, and I have a lot of the same issues as she did. She passed from a brain aneurysm. Yeah. And when they found her, nobody had been in her house for several years. She used to have people in all the time. And, she wasn't, nobody had been in there for several years. And my mother called me. I was living about an hour and a half drive away. And my mother called me and she told me what happened. And there wasn't anybody in the family that knew how to deal with her home. She was alone. She wasn't married. She had no children. She was a critical care nurse in neurology, I believe. So I went to clean her house because I was the first person that the family thought of. So I went and I stayed with my parents for a weekend or a couple, 3-4 days, something like that, while I went through things. And it was really hard to do because I had spent a lot of time with my aunt over the years, and she never had a hoarding problem before, but going through, and I mean, there wasn't the worry of being gentle with her because she was gone. And she had every piece of clothing that she had ever purchased from the time she was like a teenager on. She had every single piece of paper for, I'm trying to think, I think it was in 2005 that she passed. And I was finding papers and receipts from like the 80s. And she had a 3-bedroom house, a 2-story 3-bedroom house. And in one of the bedrooms, I couldn't even open the door. The stuff was piled about 4 feet high. I could still see over, and I'm 5 feet tall, so, or 5 feet short, however you want to say it. I could still see over, but I couldn't open the door because it was right to the door. Like I could get the door open just enough to kind of squeeze in. And I am a very methodical person when it comes to stuff like that, and I um I don't mess around. It's like start here and get it done. I'm not so much like that anymore, but I was always very organized and very, you know, like I said, methodical. So seeing that, and seeing that when you say the 3-foot path there earlier, Shelley, this was what it was like going into her home. There was like enough space to walk up the stairs to the second floor. The living room wasn't too bad. The kitchen wasn't too, like the places she lived, she still, you know, her room was okay. Her bedroom was okay. Her living room was borderline. The staircase was very cluttered. The hallways were very cluttered. There was room to move. The one bedroom was very cluttered. She had a guest room. It wasn't too terrible either. She had a long distance boyfriend that used to come up and spend weekends, and I don't know if there was anybody else maybe that used to come, and so she kept one of the rooms clean. But she definitely was on that sort of path. And I know that when my grandmother passed away, it was a similar thing, that the family was sort of questioning whether or not she was in the beginning stages of dementia, because they found stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines in the attic, that, like, it was a walk-up attic, like a loft, and it was borderline hoarding. So it's a complex and a deeply human issue, hoarding. And compassion always works better than shame. Always. Always. Healing requires safety. It requires trust. It requires patience. And sometimes people are not holding on to objects. They're holding on to memories. They're holding on to survival. They're holding on to their identity, or the fear of losing one more thing, because maybe they've lost so much already in their lives and they just don't want to lose anything else. I want to continue this conversation about hoarding. So if there is somebody in the audience that has experience, which obviously I know that there is, I'm more than happy to have you for a guest to talk about this some more, talk about your own personal experience with it, whether it was helping somebody move through it or you yourself living with that. There are resources available for people living with hoarding. There are triggers to hoarding. So again, I'll go over those. Trauma is a trigger. Mental health struggles like depression, anxiety, family conflict, living condition discussions, those are triggers. So I encourage you, if you have somebody that you love that's living with this condition, or if you yourself are living with this condition, I encourage you to seek out mental health supports locally. So crisis lines, look up, there's lots of crisis lines. There's lots of online help for support. There are OCD and hoarding support organizations. Do you know that? Believe that or not? And there's also, maybe not necessarily in your area directly right now, but there are a lot of places that have community cleanup assistance programs.